Hello and welcome back to Typical City. What to expect from Manchester City in 2024? It's a question that I think our rival fans are more interested in than ourselves as Manchester City fans, because I think Manchester City fans will be looking at it thinking a little bit more of the same, please. Last season was an example that we set. Can we achieve those standards again, though? I don't think we can. I think it's a little bit harsh to expect that from Manchester City. But as a group of fans, I do think we need a dose of realism to be injected into the way of thinking as City fans, and the expectancy levels are understandably high, but almost unrealistically so now, going off the fact that we won a treble last season. I don't think the season is quite going to be the same. I don't think we can expect Manchester City to go on a 15-game winning streak. Or, for example, like I said in the review, go and check that video out if you haven't already. I did a 2023 review yesterday, going into a quick fire sort of review of how the season panned out last season, or the calendar year rather, panned out during 2023. And I don't think City fans can expect the same again, because we were smacked with those 115 charges on the 6th of February. Following that, we didn't lose a single game until the very final game of the Premier League season. And I mean, that was a game where the Premier League had already been wrapped up, signed, sealed and delivered to Manchester City's doorstep, thanks to the absolute bottling that Arsenal provided. Now, who's going to bottle it this season? A City? Going to bottle it? A Liverpool? Arsenal? They've already started to show signs, Arsenal, of bottling it this season. So have City, in fairness. They've already shown little bits of frailty, but that's the thing with City. We've got a proven track record. Whereas Arsenal, they don't. They don't have a proven track record. Not in the modern day era. No way. Liverpool do. They've got not to the extent of Manchester City, but they do more so than Arsenal. They've got a Premier League title in recent years to brag about, whereas we've got 5 in the last 6 years. So, I mean, we could make it 6 out of 7, which is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. 4 in a row would be an unbelievable achievement. But I don't think this season's going to be like that. In truth, I really believe that the season's going to be a lot more topsy-turvy. I don't think the total points will be as high as it has been in previous seasons. I said it at the start of the season. You just hope that City can keep their heads while everyone else loses theirs, effectively, is what we need from this season going forward. And will they eat each other? Will the teams around us start to take points off each other? And it worked perfectly while we were away at the FIFA Club World Cup. Arsenal and Liverpool played each other, and if you asked City fans what's the ideal result, it would have been a 0-0, not a 1-1. But still, as close to perfection as you get. We go away and get a Club World Cup. Meanwhile, they're back at home fighting each other and taking points off each other and leaving a big gap. A 2-point gap for City to claw back at when we get back into the UK. And we did that by beating Everton on our arrival back to the UK. But it's going to be a really interesting season. I think the fixture congestion for Manchester City, the fact that we've got a game in hand, as well as injuries coming back, all that added together, I still believe Manchester City have enough ability, even with the Mahrez transfer and Gundogan transfer, and those issues that City fans have been fearful of, that these key players leaving has left us wanting in certain areas of the pitch. I don't think City are going to go in too deep into the January transfer market either. Excuse me, by the way, I'm still ill. I'm not going to go on about it, though, because I'm sick of talking about it. You're sick of hearing about it. I feel worse than I did yesterday. I don't know what's going on. I seem to be dying. I joked about dying the other day. Maybe I actually am. See, that my eye just went and just twitched. Then there's something very wrong with me, but I don't know what's going on. It seems everyone's got it. When everyone else has got it, you feel like, oh, well, at least I'm not the only one dying. It's when you're the only one dying, you go, oh my God, what the hell is this? But everyone else seems to be dying, so that should be all right. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, the fixtures are really, really interesting. In particular, March. The month of March is going to be key for Manchester City. But, I mean, it's easy to say this, but it's the other games that are just as worrying for me at times. It's the fact that we've dropped points against teams this season that we really shouldn't be. You know, Palace and Wolves. We lost to Wolves. We drew to Palace. These are the games that I think City should be learning their lessons from in the second half of the season. Let's have a quick look at the January fixtures, because I think we've got 3 games, of which only really one worries me. Let's start with Huddersfield, who are really struggling right now. 3 points above the relegation zone in the Championship for the next FA Cup game. That's this Saturday. I'm planning to do a watch-along for that this Saturday, so come and join me for that. That should be a really interesting game. I think, again, we can rotate, rest a few players, try a few players out that are short on minutes this season. Should be a good game. You expect City to comfortably push Huddersfield to one side. Could we see a historic repeat of the 10-1? Those old boys and people of the same age as me might remember that City once upon a time beat Huddersfield 10-1. What a day that was. Hat-trick of hat-tricks as well. David White being one of them, if I remember rightly. And then after that, we've got Newcastle away. That's a key game because following the Newcastle game, we've got a batch of fixtures that City should be going on and winning. Now, I've already contradicted myself there by saying that we should be going on to winning. I don't think this season's going to have a 10-game winning streak from anybody. I think it's going to be 3 games and then a draw. All of us are going to be doing that. So I do think it's going to be an interesting... But if anyone can, it's Manchester City. We're the one team that has proven we can go on a massive winning streak. So you just don't know. With the Newcastle away game, that'll be the perfect example for Manchester City to go and use that as a springboard, a platform for momentum, as a catapult to launch us into 2024 on fire and see where that takes us. Because after that, like I said, we've got fixtures that we should win. In Newcastle, who are struggling for form, they're threatened with horrible injuries as well. Going away to St James's Park, regardless of injuries, is going to be a hostile environment for Manchester City to face. I mean, they got peppered with shots. Liverpool destroyed them in terms of XG yesterday. And it could easily have been 4 or 5-0 to Liverpool if Darwin Núñez learned how to actually put the ball in the back of the net. But we've got Erling Haaland, who hopefully should be back for this game. And I mean, if they give us those amount of chances, you like to think we should go there and win. But they did pose a threat going the other way, Newcastle. So, you know, they've still got that potent threat in attack that you need to be mindful of. Gordon's counter-attacking ability, Isaac's a finisher, and you had Wilson in there as well if he's back in time. And I mean, you know, excuse me, it's going to be a really interesting game. Burnley at home following that, should be winning that comfortably. In between there should have been the Brentford game. Now, when that's going to be played is another interesting fact into the 2024 section of this season, because it hasn't been decided. It depends on City's FA Cup involvement and Brentford's FA Cup involvement and our Champions League involvement. And we saw last year a fixture between Arsenal and Manchester City was postponed. And that wasn't played until the 26th of April. So we've got to go a long way into the season with a game in hand, which is it's that constant, like, monkey on your back, that constant thorn in your side that you're always going to be chasing. You could be, because you've played less games than the rest of your rivals, whereas last season, our game in hand was against Arsenal, who also had played the same amount of games because that was the team the game was postponed against. So it's not the case this time. Brentford are not in the title race, whereas Arsenal and Liverpool have all played 1 game more than us, and we're 1 game behind. So if we go all the way to the end of April with that psychological barrier of a game in hand, that's going to play a psychological factor for City and how they can handle that. I mean, if we were able to get onto level points with a game in hand or even overtake these teams with a game in hand, then it flips on its head, doesn't it? It becomes a positive psychological factor, and that's really good news. So you could spin it both ways. Excuse me. February fixtures. Brentford. We actually play Brentford again. This time away to Brentford, rather, and they're 4 points above the relegation zone right now. They've been dragged into a relegation battle, nearly. I mean, just above Everton, who have had 10 points docked off them, 4 points above Luton. I mean, Brentford don't scare me quite as much as they did last season. The absence of Ivan Toney is huge for them. If Arsenal were to go and sign Ivan Toney, or even Chelsea, who's been rumoured, I can see them climbing the table. I mean, Arsenal would worry me with Ivan Toney. They would genuinely worry me because they are missing that type of player, a goal scorer. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Everton is the next game at home. I thought we did really well against them at Goodison Park. No reason to see why we shouldn't do the same again at the Etihad. Then you've got Copenhagen away. Don't forget last season we drew 0-0 last season. And the importance of this game is looking forward a little bit, because The second leg against Copenhagen at home at the Etihad is sandwiched in March in between United and Liverpool. That's a fixture that we therefore need to take this Copenhagen game, and effectively, let's hope we can put the game to bed at their ground, be done and dusted, so we can come back to the Etihad with a comfortable cushion to relax and play, maybe rotate a few players and rest a few players if needed for the Liverpool game, which follows it after the next leg against Copenhagen. After the first leg against Copenhagen, we've got Chelsea at home. A very unpredictable game. Chelsea just seems to be that team that 1 minute they look good. I mean, within the game, within the 90 minutes of football, they look really potent and high quality football. And then they look like Sunday League team 5 minutes later. Within the same 5 minutes passage of play, Chelsea just looks so fragile, yet so strong. It's a really odd dynamic at Chelsea right now, and I can't quite figure them out. And it's probably why they sit bang in the middle of the Premier League for such unpredictability. Following that, Bournemouth away, tough. That's all I can say about that. With the form that they're on right now, tough. It's going to be really interesting. Solanke, who's found his shooting boots this season, really, really tough. And that completes the February fixtures. Then roll on into March. An easy game to start with March. United at home, 3 points. Let's call it that. After that, Copenhagen. After that, with, like I said, you're hoping the first leg we've done the damage to Copenhagen. Hopefully the tie is done and dusted at that point, because then following the Copenhagen game at home, we've got Liverpool away, and then Brighton away, and then Arsenal at home. And I mean, March doesn't get much tougher than that. And with all due respect, a derby, I mean, obviously I'm joking when I say it's an easy win against United. A derby's a derby. Anything can happen. But yeah, the Liverpool-Brighton away, 2 away games, 2 horrible away games back to back, followed by Arsenal at home. That 3-game period could define our season. I think that's where we could be in a title race or out of a title race, and we could knock Arsenal and Liverpool out of it, or we could roll out the red carpet for them to go and win a Premier League themselves. So March is a key factor to the season going forward. After that, you start thinking again about last season, Manchester City, last season and a winning streak, because the following 8 games after Arsenal at home, you got Villa at home, Palace away, Luton at home, Spurs away, Forest away, Wolves at home, Fulham away, and then to finish the season, West Ham at home. There's 8 games with only really Spurs away that you would think that would be tough. The rest, Villa at home, who are not the team they were at the start of the season. I think they've shown frailties since they beat City and Arsenal. Since those 2 games where Villa were considered genuine title contenders, they've collapsed. They took a 2-0 lead at United and they fell apart and they lost 3-2. And they've dropped points since then as well. So I'm not convinced. And they were lucky against Burnley as well, Villa. Really, really lucky. So I'm not convinced Villa and this is in April. This will be played in April. So their form is on the decline, and going off the trajectory of Villa's form, I'm not as scared of them as, and particularly playing at the Etihad as well, I'm not as scared of them as I was when we were going to Villa Park, put it that way. And the rest of the games, other than Spurs away, you expect City to win. You expect them to win those games. And if we've done our job in March and not made life difficult for us, we'll have a potential ninth game in there with the Brentford postponed game being rescheduled. Throw that into there, and again, another game that I think City should be winning. And all of a sudden, the Premier League title looks very, very attainable. And it's a 4-peat is very achievable for Manchester City, and it's incredibly exciting, an incredibly exciting season. Obviously, the Champions League and the FA Cup games are going to be sandwiched in between these fixtures. They're yet to be decided, with no dates on them yet because we've not progressed that far. But we have to wait and see. Of course, we've got injuries to consider. The return of Erling Haaland, Jeremy Doku, Kevin De Bruyne, and John Stones, of course, who I'm not relying on, to be honest. I am a lot more hopeful in the second half of the season, thinking about the likes of Haaland, Doku, and Kevin De Bruyne. John Stones is showing a level of injury proneness, if there is such a word, that you start to think you can't rely on the guy. What he did at the end of last season was incredible, absolutely sensational from John Stones, but he's picking up injuries too frequently that we need to make contingency plans for life without John Stones, whether it's life without him if he's not even at the club, which I don't want. I would love him to stay for 3-4 more years. We just need to get him into a position where he can play a full season. We haven't seen John Stones for a full season, maybe ever. He's always injured at some point during the season, and we need to factor that into our planning going forward, which is a shame. We can probably expect other injuries. The nightmare scenario is a long-term Rodri injury. That's the nightmare scenario for Manchester City, and that will kill our season effectively. If we were to lose Rodri. And no more silly suspensions, please. No more silly decisions like that. And mistakes in the game-to-game as well. We need to eradicate those. But negative notes aside, there aren't that many of them anymore. It feels very positive being a Manchester City fan right now, and there's plenty to look forward to. Looking at Arsenal and looking at Liverpool, although Liverpool's XG was really high against Newcastle, I thought that there was major frailties at the back. They were exposed every time Newcastle came forward, with a half-injured front line as well for Newcastle. They weren't as potent as they could be, but they looked dangerous. So although Liverpool won, they were gifted penalties in that game. The second penalty for me was a dive and shouldn't have happened. And that was a game that was 3-2 at the time and Newcastle were on the up and up. Who knows how that game could have panned out if Anthony Taylor hadn't given Liverpool a penalty in that situation. So it's a scenario that was, at the end of the game, they come away with a really high XG and 4-2, but they didn't convince me. They may have convinced you, but they didn't convince me. I think there's some cracks in Liverpool's armour that can be exposed by other Premier League teams this season. I really believe that. And Arsenal as well, who I didn't believe had cracks in their armour, quite as open cracks as they've seemed to have had in the last 2 games. But it's a surprise that's very, very welcome, because I really didn't see Arsenal dropping points against West Ham or against Fulham. And to lose both was a major blow to their momentum and their hopes of gaining a Premier League title this season. Whereas I think City have got so much experience in these situations now that we can look forward to the second half of seasons. Whereas Arsenal and Liverpool, knowing how City perform in the second half of seasons, they have things to fear. We don't have that much to fear in the second half of the season. We've got players coming back. We've got signs of form starting. The snowball is rolling down the hill and getting bigger and bigger in terms of Manchester City momentum. We've got to beat Newcastle away, and that will keep that snowball going. That's the one fixture for me that if we go there, St James's Park, we could see another potential run from Manchester City. My bet personally is I don't think we'll see City win 8 games in a row. I think we'll see a silly draw thrown into there, and the same will be said about Liverpool and Arsenal come the end of the season. And I can see the league being won with low 80s in terms of total point tally, but I still see Manchester City being top of the pile at the end of the 23-24 season. But what do you think? What are your predictions for the rest of 2024? Will we win a Champions League? Will we win the Premier League? Do you see us getting a treble and slapping an FA Cup in that? What a ridiculous achievement. I mean, 2 trebles back-to-back is unrealistic. It's not going to happen, let's be honest. But if it did, it will never be surpassed in the history of football again. I cannot see it happening ever again. It would be a ridiculous achievement. Can we do it? I think we can. Will we? I don't think we will. But I do think we've got one of the big boys, as in Premier League, Champions League. I think City are winning one of them again this season. That's my beliefs. What are your beliefs? Get in the comment sections below. I really want to hear your thoughts. Like and subscribe. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silverware.